Many people assume that after the Qin Dynasty unified China, the country settled into a fixed system of government that remained essentially unchanged until the end of the Qing Dynasty. But the question really worth asking isn't why Qin Shi Huang chose centralized imperial rule. It's this: did he have any other choice? To answer that, we need to go back to before the Qin. When the Zhou dynasty was founded, the feudal system made a great deal of sense. The realm was vast, and the challenge wasn't simply one of distance. In that era, there was no unified written language, no standardized weights and measures. Languages, customs, and laws varied from region to region. The central court had neither enough trained officials to station across every corner of the realm, nor enough military force to respond quickly to crises in distant territories. More fundamentally, the entire administrative apparatus required for direct rule simply didn't exist yet. Under these conditions, granting land to lords and allowing them to govern their own territories was a practical choice. Not the ideal choice, but the one that could actually function given the realities of the time. The system worked reasonably well in the early Zhou period, but it carried a fatal internal logic. The lords grew stronger. The Zhou king grew weaker. The longer time passed, the larger the lords' territories, the stronger their armies, and the smaller the gap between their power and the king's. By the spring and autumn and warring states periods, the Zhou king had become a figurehead. Real power belonged to the rival states, and they fought each other for centuries. How many lives were lost? How many cities destroyed? The numbers are beyond reckoning. When Qin Shi Huang unified the realm, he inherited a world that had just emerged from centuries of war. The feudal system had already used centuries of conflict to demonstrate where it would lead. At that moment, his options were actually quite limited. The feudal system was not destroyed by Qin Shi Huang. It didn't fail in his hands. It failed in the hands of history itself. But here's a very interesting question. What if, after unifying China, Qin Shi Huang had kept the feudal system, allowing the lords to continue governing their own territories? What would have happened? This isn't just a hypothetical. History actually ran this experiment, the Han Dynasty. When Liu Bang founded the Han, he faced an immediate practical problem. He had won the empire with the help of allies and generals. They had fought for him. He owed them something in return. So, the early Han produced a peculiar arrangement. The commandery county system and the feudal system running in parallel. Territories under direct imperial control were governed as commanderies and counties. At the same time, vast tracts of land were enfeoffed to meritorious generals and members of the Liu clan. This arrangement maintained a surface stability for several decades. But with each passing generation, the enfeoffed kings grew a little stronger. Then, the rebellion of the seven states erupted. The rebellion was suppressed, but it told everyone something. In a unified empire, a feudal system sustained over the long term would continuously strengthen regional power and dramatically increase the risk of conflict between the center and the periphery. Not because the lords were necessarily bad men, but because the structure would eventually push them toward that position. This isn't a history lesson. This is history running an experiment on our behalf. The question: what happens if you keep the feudal system? The answer: the rebellion of the 7 states. Later, Emperor Wu of Han introduced the decree of gracious sharing, forcing lords to divide their territories among all their heirs, generation by generation, diluting their power over time. Combined with a series of further measures to weaken the lords, centralized imperial rule gradually consolidated. It took nearly 100 years for that consolidation to truly take hold. But once it did, the story wasn't over, because over the 2,000 years that followed, Chinese history kept repeating the same logic. When regional power grew too large, the center would move to reclaim it. The mid-Tang Dynasty, the military governors, the Jidushi, accumulated increasing power. This eventually led to the Anshi Rebellion, and regional warlordism persisted for over 100 years. The center concluded regional power could no longer be left so loose. So the Song Dynasty moved sharply in the other direction, compressing regional military authority, keeping power firmly in the center's hands, but pulling power too tight created its own problems. Regional military capacity became so weak that when external pressure came, there was almost nothing to resist with. So later dynasties adjusted it again, searching for a new balance between concentration and delegation. The Ming built a highly centralized system where the emperor held all authority, but when an emperor was negligent or inadequate, the entire apparatus would begin to seize up. The Qings made some institutional adjustments, but the core structural tension was never truly resolved. This logic appeared again and again across 2,000 years. Pull too tight, and when the center fails, the whole country collapses with it. Loosen too much, and regional power grows until the realm fractures again. No dynasty ever found a balance point that held forever. Today, people often ask why the historical figures didn't choose a different path. Why didn't Qin Shi Huang keep the feudal system? Why didn't the Han move against the lords sooner? Why didn't the Tang better control the military governors? But most of the time, what truly constrained them wasn't wisdom. It was their era. The Qing's centralized rule wasn't a perfect design conjured from nothing by Qin Shi Huang. It was an answer pressed out by historical force. After centuries of war, the Han's decree of gracious sharing wasn't a stroke of genius from Emperor Wu. It was a lesson bought at the price of a generation, the rebellion of the 7 states. Every institutional shift across the Tang, Song, Ming, and Qing was driven by a historical pressure that couldn't be ignored. Every system of governance is like a key. It can open the door of today, but it may not open the door of tomorrow. So, back to the question we started with. Did Qin Shi Huang have another choice? Perhaps, but history proved again and again afterward that those seemingly different choices would eventually face the same pressures. 2,000 years of imperial Chinese history is not a story about one system being permanently correct. It is a story of humanity endlessly searching for balance between the pull of centralization and the push of delegation, failing and beginning again.